to have everyone here. And this is a very, very important discussion that we are going to be having, especially in light of what recently happened in Kaduna, the women leader, the Labour women leader that was killed. So it really just speaks to the importance of this conversation. So before we really dive into the program, I would like for us to have a moment of silence just to honor her and others like her that have given their lives for the sake of a good Nigeria, that her family will be comforted and that her death will not be in vain. I always say that there is always, people pay the price for a better Nigeria, and she's one of those that have paid the price with her life for a better Nigeria. So I would just, Pastor Lu, do you want to share the video now? And then we have a moment of silence and then we continue. So please bear with us. I think this is important. Thank you. I think this is important for us as we continue to struggle for a better Nigeria. And thank you. Yeah, she did pay the ultimate price. And so did her family. Yeah, thank you.
If we wisely cast our vote, I am telling you, Peter Obi will save us. Peter Obi will save us. Peter Obi will save us. In Nigeria, Peter Obi will save us. Everyone is happy. We move.
You are muted.
Okay, thank you. Her name was Victoria Chintex. It's a name that we should all remember and as part of our history, especially in these times. So please remember her family and other women, not just the women, but also everyone that is out there in this space, advocating and fighting for a better Nigeria. Unfortunately, she paid with her life. It's the ultimate sacrifice. And many others are being maimed, tortured, all for the sake of a good Nigeria, not just for themselves, but for all of us. So I know we are kind of starting off on a sour note, but I'm sure our speaker would get us back in a positive and hopeful mood as we continue this conversation. So welcome again, everyone. Jumoke Akintaylor, I'm one of the members of the ALG management team. Pastor Itwa is unavoidably late. He will be joining us shortly. Pastor Sonny is the co-convener of this platform, and he's here. He has joined us, so we'll get started. So I just want to, Miss Jonathan and I were talking earlier on about pronouncing her name. So her name, I think I got it right, is Iye Jonathan Aikavar. And she is a member of Institute of Directors. She's a social entrepreneur and founder of CESO Empowerment Foundation, a disaster relief organization which supports internally displaced persons and refugees, especially now with the flood victims. Before joining CESO, Iye worked with the United Nations Children Funds, UNICEF Nigeria, as a private sector fundraising specialist, and UNICEF Switzerland as a corporate alliance specialist. Iye has also worked in the NGO sector, including with the Center for Values in Leadership Nigeria, in banking, advertising, and in Christian ministry. She's a member of the Institute of Directors of Nigeria and a strong advocate for women and displaced persons' rights. She currently serves as member, Governing Council, Grooming People for Better Livelihood Center, an institution serving economically disadvantaged women. Work Setup Group member, Fix Politics, an initiative aimed at fixing Nigeria and Africa's politics. She's a member of the advisory board of Amnesty International Nigeria, a member of civil society organization steering committee on prevention of mass atrocities in Nigeria. She's a graduate from the School of Politics, Policy and Governance with a certificate in public leadership and policy, and a proud alumna of Federal Government Girls College, Bukuto in Benue State. She holds a master's degree in political management from the George Washington University and a first degree in economics from the London School of Economics and Political Science. She's currently the African Democratic Congress candidate contesting for a seat in the Federal House of Representatives, elections to represent Hakwande, you're going to forgive me for this pronunciation, Usogo Federal Constituency in Benue State. Usongo, welcome. We are glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. And thank you all for joining in.
Yes. You know, if we could just start off with I know we talk a lot about women in politics and the need to have more women in politics. I'm for one, I'm a girly girl. I believe in girl power. I believe there's so much that women have to offer. But unfortunately, we've been silenced as we see the Victoria in Chentex, Victoria Chentex in Kaduna, and so many other women that have tried to lend their voice. And also their nurturing instincts. We're born nurturers. That's what we are. We're builders by nature. If you could just lend your voice to her struggle and yours and many other women that have been trying to rise up to help build and nurture Nigeria back. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, our thoughts and our sympathy and, go out to, Victoria's family, to the Labour Party, and in fact, to all Nigerian women. She symbolizes, I think, the struggle of Nigerian women, and also just our continent, because unfortunately, our continent's story in terms of female representation is really one where we've sort of tried to silence the other half of the population. And I really believe that, because that's the reason we're lagging behind in so many ways in development indices, because we're just not making sure we're providing opportunities for all. We have this cultural resistance, within, I was talking to one of my colleagues who's running for office in Kwara State. And he actually said that during their own primaries, he's with one of the bigger parties, women came out and the men actually said, a woman cannot lead us. And, this lopsided misinterpretation of what it means for women, when women step forward and, we're dealing with all these, some of these egos, thankfully not all males like that, we have he for she's, actually misses out on what women bring to the table. I mean, I always laugh when people say women cannot lead men, because we give birth to the human race now. We raise the children. We're the one that teaches and prepare them for the world and prepare them for leadership. So what are you talking about, for goodness sake? We're the ones who, we nurture, we carry the children for 9 months, and all that. So I don't understand what we mean by women cannot lead. Women don't have capacity. We manage homes, we manage. So we bring those skills in so many ways. And this is not in any way an attempt to even domesticate or to equate building a house with building governance or whatever, but it's all about managing people, managing resources, and making sure that everyone's needs are catered for and cared for, and taking the hard decisions that we have to take. Unfortunately, Victoria paid the ultimate price. And this is not the first time, it's nothing new. Even a few years ago, I think in 2019, in Kogi State, we know about the PDP woman leader who was burnt to death in her house. She was shot and then burnt in her house. And yes, a few of the people were brought to justice, but those who were really maybe the key instigators are still at large, and so these are some of the challenges that women face. Thankfully, of course, we've had, in the last few years, we've had a real push. I'm a member of a group called the Feminist Manifesto. We've had a real push for more female representation. And I will read some statistics to you. Currently, Invictus Africa recently released a study. Believe it or not, we are the giant of Africa, right? Unfortunately, we're the giant lagging behind in women's representation in governance. And also we're lagging behind just in women in parliament. We have the least number of women being represented across the African continent. So we actually rank lowest with having female representation in our legislature. We've actually regressed. We were much better in when Obasanjo was here, when Jonathan, under the APC government, under this particular administration, it is worse than ever. So we have an average of 5.45% of women compared to our brothers and sisters in Rwanda who have over almost 50%, and we see the statistics, we see the effects, we're seeing how multidimensional poverty is increasing because women are just not being represented at the table. A few months ago, Honorable Nkiruka, I'm sorry, I can't remember her surname, in the House of Reps, actually presented certain bills that we were pushing for. We were even asking for 35% mandatory representation in governance positions, in ministerial positions. That was rejected by the largely male-denominated national legislature. So we really need everyone on board to push this thing, to call our legislators, our representatives, and say, no, we need more women at the table. Because if you don't, you're not representing half of your women. You're not making sure that their voices are being heard on issues. We're not making sure that resources are being put forward for them. And if you deny the women, of course, in extension, you're denying your families, and we're truncating our future. So it's really very, very important. I want to really recognize the political parties that made it very easy for women to get in. I mean, my party, the African Democratic Congress, the other party, SDP as well, and a few other parties, and Labour Party, of course, they've had a lot of female representation. They've encouraged women to come in by either making sure that their tickets were heavily discounted, or they made contributions in other ways and didn't have to put on the table the kinds of scary, humongous sums we're hearing parties like the APC and so on were putting forward for their own candidates, which in effect blocked out and excluded many women. Because if you ask me, if you're a woman who is responsible with her resources and is conscious of the fact that when you're going to get into office, you're going to serve and you're going to work for your people, you will be very, very hesitant to drop the kind of monies, 100 million, because you're thinking, how am I going to pay this back? Or if someone says they'll sponsor you, you're thinking, okay, so what exactly are you going to ask me to do in return? These are the kinds of questions and decisions that women make. So we're very happy to see some of the parties really taking a step forward to promote and push female candidates. I'll stop there at this point in time.
If I could just also, I'm playing angel's advocate because I never played devil's advocate. The question is, why do women have to ask to be given an opportunity? Men don't ask to be given an opportunity. So why are women asking? Why aren't they taking a seat at the table? Why aren't they, pushing forward like their male counterparts and just, coming out there? Why the need for permission, basically? Because once you ask for permission, you're yielding authority or power.
I think it's not so much that women are asking for permission. women are basically pushing and saying we are making contributions. I mean, if you think about almost every single major change and good that has come about, they were pushed through by women. Traditionally, as we know, Nigerian women have always taken a front seat in demanding the rights. I mean, even in the colonial era, it was the women that led protests on just taxes. You know, even recently, who were the people who are the forefront shouting for children's rights and for women, for girls who were abducted, like Chibok girls and so on? They were women, largely, led by women, largely. So we're not saying that, oh, give us permission. We're saying we're doing this work. Remove the barriers that have been put in place by male privilege. You know, so we have, for example, a constitution, and we have parties whose structures and rules are primarily made by men. Now, some of those things are not even necessarily that they were made with bad intentions, but it's just that they were made from a particular perspective that did not take into account certain things. So for example, you know, if I'm in a political party, or I'm trying to join a political party, the cultural setup is such that they have late night meetings. Generally, in my party, that doesn't happen, thankfully, or it does not happen that often. You know, they have meetings late into the night. I've heard of parties where sometimes even at 12 midnight, they're calling and saying, come. Now you're a woman, you have a much wider sphere of responsibility. You have your work, you have your political work to attend to, but also you have family, you have a home. Now, the males have the privilege generally of being in a society that has traditionally and culturally made it acceptable for them to leave domestic duties generally to their females, to their wives. And they now go on and do these other things. Of course, we're doing all this domestic work unpaid. You know, that's another story, that's another discussion, you know, but they have that, so they can set up these meetings. You know, that's just one example, right? And then, of course, there's also the challenge of gender-based violence, which we've seen, for example, with Victoria recently, you know, where the woman is the target, because we know, we've also seen how women can be weapons or instruments or used as instruments of war, right? So we have all these crises, we have all these issues going on in the country. And what happens during is the kidnapping women generally, abducting girls, rape being used to intimidate women, because we know that when they do that, you know, the men themselves, they try and use that to emasculate our men. So it's very important for the world to recognize we're not asking for permission. We're saying we're doing this work. And so we need to step up and move. Of course, there are also the other conflicts around, you know, what should be the traditional role of the woman in society, what it really just influences. We have all these things where we have certain people interpreting certain scriptures that say, oh, women cannot lead, or these people, whatever, are interpreting it in a certain way. But it is important to note that we're not coming to the table and asking for permission. We're saying we need affirmative action, we need equity, we need more equitable, a more equitable situation. We need to have the barriers removed to women coming into positions of leadership. I hope that answers your Angel's question.
Yes, and continuing along the line of my angelic questions, you know, I had this conversation with one of my friends talking about politics and women in politics, and one of the questions that came up, or one of the issues that came up, was this issue of having late night political meetings. And his response to me was, you go to night vigil. If church calls for night vigil, you're there from like 12 till 4 a.m. So why can't you go to a political meeting at 2 a.m.? That was a question. And I was like, well, it's different. I'm going to pray. And his response was, yes, but you're going to build when you go to those meetings. So can you speak a little bit on, against that argument that because if you go to a church now, it's predominantly women that would be, well, let me speak for for here in the States, it's mostly women. I think across the globe, more women are in church, praying and doing night vigils and special programs. So what is the difference? If you can leave your house to go to church and pray, why can't you go to a political meeting? That's a question I was asked.
I think I would flip the question and ask the gentleman, what are you doing in the daytime? How come you cannot do your meetings at a decent hour? Who is looking after your children every single evening when you're out at those meetings? It's your women. Now, if you notice, when we go to those night vigils, I don't tend to go to a lot of them myself. I used to. Now, I must confess, I tend to sleep at home and stuff. Sorry, please, we'll need.
Sorry, can we mute? Can we mute everyone? There's a lot of disturbance. Okay, please unmute yourself. He just muted everyone. Okay, thank you.
So I would flip that. But having said that, also note that when we go for those vigils, if you look at the back, or if you look at us, we're carrying a child now. We've tied the child on the back, or they are sleeping in one corner, somebody is fanning, we're taking turns fanning. So it's much more about collaboration. It's much more about, what's the word now? It's much more also about basically, being more inclusive of everyone, right? Now, my father has been a politician for a long time. I grew up in a family where my dad was very political, and I can tell you for a fact, he would go to work, he would come back, and then sometimes I've seen those meetings. First, a lot of the time, those meetings are not disciplined. They don't start on time. They will say 7 o'clock, people struggling at 9, 11. We women generally tend to be better with managing time. We don't have that kind of time. We tend to do a lot more, So I think it's not so much, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this meeting. That's just one example of how sometimes the political setup is skewed in that way. In my party, for example, we may have meetings late in the night if there's a need to, but one of the things we start our meetings on time. We have Zoom meetings now, right? Because we're looking at how to work efficiently. Time is a valuable resource. So we're now in a new political dispensation. And sometimes these are the things we tell ourselves in the party. We say, no, we're in the 21st century. We need to move. Yes, when you get into governance, you're going to work late into the night. You're going to do different things, but we're already working late into the night, doing our politics at home, governing our houses. How many of us go to bed at 9? Very few, because you're doing certain things. So it's the same thing, right? So I think they should be inclusive, yes. We will need sometimes to work late into the night, just like anybody who has a regular job does. But if you check it, a lot of those meeting times are generally, they run late because there's a lot of indiscipline. People don't come on time. And those are the things we need to change, even as a culture, as a country, and also work just much more efficiently. I'd rather have a late night meeting talking about how to deal with the situation of displaced persons. Even at those meetings, generally, when I've listened in on some of those meetings, it's usually plotting how to make sure power gets to somewhere else and whatever, or looking at how to make sure that some of those resources are distributed, and usually in a way that does not work for anyone. I'll tell you a story. My father told me a very funny story. He said, he would have there's a very well-known political actor in the country, I will not say his name, who would come to our house and stay there till 1 a.m., 2 a.m. My mom would want to go and sleep, but of course she's being polite, so she would sit there with my father. This guy will come with his people, right? They would have gone around the whole day paying visits, seeing this person, seeing that person. Meanwhile, there's work that we need to do to develop our country. Because if you see other countries, they're not busy doing that, but they will do this, go this. Then he will come to our house. He will want tea. My mom will make tea or dinner. Then he'll sit and they'll talk about everything and nothing under the sun. And sometimes he's busy complaining about some other political person who is not fit for office. And they want to give this person this office. And sometimes, I'm sorry to say, sometimes it's gossip. So it is not exactly productive, those late night meetings, some of them. So it's very important for us to look at those. These are the questions that women will begin to ask. We say, no, no, so what are we doing this meeting for? What's the agenda? When do we start? When do we end? That's how you run any business. If you're a serious business person, and Nigeria needs serious business run to make sure that we come out of poverty and to make sure that we really, really begin to realize our potential. But we can only do that when we begin to work more efficiently and use our resources more judiciously, especially time.
Thank you. Can you speak a little bit about women in leadership and their success stories? Because that is a good indicator of what women bring to the table, right?
Yeah.
The women that have had a seat at the table and their record has proved what they could do. Can you speak a little bit about that? I have a few of my favorites, but
I mean, sure, we look at people like, let me start from some of the top, we look at people like Jacinda Ardern, for example, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and we see her performance during COVID. And the studies show very clearly that during COVID, the countries that were led by women did a lot better. There's this argument, in women's studies and whatever, and even just in leadership studies, that women tend to of course, deliver so much better during crisis times, and so on. And so they tend to recruit female leaders in when things are in crisis. Of course, she was there before COVID came, but she managed it much, much better than her male counterparts. That's just one example, right? So I'll just talk about Jacinda and a few of the other female leaders. Let's bring it home. So we have Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. I mean, come on, guys. We've seen who she is, where she's at. We've seen the incredible difference, where she was here. Now it's not just about women being in leadership. It's about having women of character, of capacity and competence to be able to deliver. And in the same vein, if we demanded of men the kinds of things we demand of women for them to be in office, or for them to be in leadership, I think we'll have a much better country, a much better world, because women tend to be judged so much more on, yes, you have to be competent, you have to have capacity, you have to have character. Apart from that, you also have to look a certain way if you're not careful. Ngozi has distinguished herself with her own, signature style, and all of that. I'm just reading this great book she wrote on women in leadership, and they're just talking about some of the challenges that they faced as women in leadership. But she's worked hard. So Ngozi, of course, Dora Akunyili of blessed memory, we see the impact she made with NAFDAC, right? And then of course, Dr. Adadevo, we saw how this woman saved lives during the Ebola crisis. One of the other women I really love, I've forgotten her name now. I'll need to look it up very quickly. But she's the woman, I'm sure we've all heard of the Kevlar vest. She's a scientist. She's late now. She was an Eastern European American scientist, and she developed the Kevlar vest. And that we know that's a protective bulletproof vest. And it really struck me how, this woman was this scientific leader working in her lab, and she found this material, and she decided instead of using it for destructive purposes, she would use it for protective, and that just shows you that's one of the feminine traits of leadership, that needs to protect. And she came up with the Kevlar vest, right? And very little known fact, but there you go. So you have that leader who does that. But also, of course, some of my more favorite and recent leaders, Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, right? She's my mentor. She's one of my mentors. And one thing I appreciate about people like Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, Alero Aida Otobo, Professor Remi Shonaya, and so many women in our spaces is when we see them, people like Sister Auntie Yemisi Ransom Kuti, they go through and they try different things. These are women that have mentored me or are mentoring me in one way or the other. And so many others. I stand on the shoulders of so many other women, my mom, and I've seen them sacrifice and speak up for people. I'll take Dr. Obi, for example. We know her history in Obasanjo's government. She was known as Madame Due Process. And this thing I'm talking about, women hating waste, there she is, she exemplified that for me. But what really endeared her to me was that Chibok girls affair. Now, we can say all sorts of things about it. People talk about how oh, it was a politically motivated thing. The issue was that, you know, one thing when Dr. Obi Ezekwesili and those other women, Aisha Yusufu and so on and so forth, stood up and said, no, we cannot have our children kidnapped and we're all just sitting here looking at this thing in 2014, and people were busy debating, did it happen, didn't it happen, it can't be true, it can't be true, and they stood up. The courage it took. They were protesting at that Unity Fountain, and sometimes the government was sending people to go and bully them, and they stood their ground. Some of them were sprayed with tear gas. You know, some of us were protesting here. I almost got arrested in one of the big hotels for wearing a Bring Back Our Girls t-shirt. Yes, this happened in this country, and we're seeing more of those things. So we have these things, and what I found really interesting was that they push for these things. Sometimes other entities come in, or bodies, the government came, you know, got some of those children released. Some of them are still in captivity as we speak. One of the things I found about these women, they're very resilient. So Dr. Obi ran for president, and she, you know, she stepped aside, for example, and she came in, and when she stepped aside, went off on this course, did this fellowship, and she came back and she started Fixed Politics. And now Fixed Politics, they've launched so many initiatives. They have the School of Politics. I'm one of the graduates, and they have a School of Politics, Policy and Governance, Governance, where they've got about, they had students, about 300 students. 55 of those students in the last 2 years have stood for office. They've gone to primaries. And out of those 55 students, 6 of them have won their ticket, and one of those included. Talk about impact. And these are people who they've tried certain things, have been moved. Of course, I cannot leave out the amazing women. There's just so many. We know about WIMBIS, you know, women in management and business. The trailblazers there, Adjola Aziz, who is also running for House of Reps. She's another mentor of mine. Bola Adeshola, who was a former MD of mine in the banking sector. Mrs. Funke Oshubodu, we've seen the amazing things they do and they are doing in the sector. And these women are resilient. They move from one sector to the other. Mrs. Funke Oshubodu has transited from banking to, so there's so many of them doing amazing things and blazing a trail for others to follow. Of course, thank you. Someone has mentioned Ifweko Mogbi Okaru. We've seen some of the reforms that she brought. Also, Omobola Johnson, you know, in the telco sector, and so many other women who are working. Right now, I can tell you, one of the most efficient passport offices in this country is the Makurdi Immigration Office. And the Comptroller General there is a woman. I went in there, their turnaround is the best in the country. Turnaround time is the best in the country. So even in Benue, we're seeing women doing amazing things, and it's all over the place. So we've seen that. I will conclude by also saying that even in peace processes, you know, one of the challenges we have with conflict on the continent is that when there are conflicts and we go in to have these peace discussions, because usually the peaceful discussions or the peace discussions and conflict resolution are being brokered by mostly male-led and male-denominated governors, they tend to sort of exclude the women. But we remember very clearly during the Liberian War, it was the women that stood up and said they'd had enough and they wanted peace in their country. And they pushed that process through and were included in those conflict resolution discussions. So it's very, very important. Of course, we've seen all those things, and there's so many others. And someone says we need less complaints and begging for inclusion and more action. The truth is we're doing more, there's a lot of action going on behind the scenes, you know, and the truth is that we've taken to the streets, we've seen some of the demonstrations. Women tend to be a lot more, what's the word? Strategic when they're dealing with some of these things, because we also understand that even as you take action, there are repercussions, and you need to also and want to be ready for them. We've seen, for example, the price that Victoria has paid, and you have to be ready. And the question for many times is, are you ready for those to face those repercussions? We've seen also, we saw Dr. Akunyili. Remember the attempts on her life, the bullet that went through her head, and unfortunately too, her husband was killed violently just a year ago. So, you know, the risk are enormous, but it's what it is. That's life. You know, you have to take them and roll with the punches as they come.
Thank you. A pastor has joined us, and before I hand over to him, I just wanted to also add all these wonderful women that you named, they conduct themselves with dignity and respect. And there is no drama or just scandal, following their names. And for each one that you named, there are, I would say, millions of unsung heroes. Nigerian women every day nurturing their communities back to life, reaching out. They may not have political offices, but they are leaders. I have a very good friend who I work with, who is counseling on wheels and reaching like the ravished areas in the north. These are women. Nigerian women are getting up on a daily basis to step in and I would say clean up the mess, to really clean up the mess. And it's important for us to understand the value that women bring to the table. Not just because we're women, but because we are a part of the society and we are co-laborers, we are co-builders. And to continuously leave women out is to leave opportunities for growth and for success. So I'll hand over to Mr. Chairman. Welcome, sir. Good evening. Over to you.
Good evening. I'm enjoying your conversation. Let me have you ask a few more questions and then we'll take it from there.
Okay.
Good evening.
Thank you.
Good evening. Yeah.
So,
good evening. I guess, sorry I came in late. I had something back to back running. But before she asks that question, I have one question for you. What's the meaning of your name?
Yeah, it means it has happened. Oshele.
Oh, you don't? Oshele. It means Iwolokon.
It has happened in Tiv. So that's what it means.
Interesting name. Okay. Jumoke, please ask a couple more questions and then I'll ask my own.
Great, welcome. So, Jumoke, before we carry on, I just want to also just jump in on what you said about how the women conduct themselves with dignity and respect and say that, to be honest, governance and the world would be a much better place if we demanded the same standards of the males as we demand of the women. They need to conduct ourselves with dignity and respect, even as we deal in politics, in so many things. I cannot count, even if you remember, one of the former prime ministers, I think it was of New Zealand, actually had to call out a male counterpart, because sometimes when you're in politics, they call you all kinds of names. They may call you, put slurs on you, and they're not called out because they're men. So we have one standard for women that we expect of, how women should conduct themselves. And we have another for, if some of the male politicians don't behave themselves, we sort of accept it because they're males and all of that. I think we should call everybody to that standard because we're building a nation. And if the males are conducting themselves in a particular way, not all, of course, some, they're fighting on, we've seen that happen, right? Fighting in the House of Assembly or in the National Assembly, throwing chairs at each other and whatever, or even calling women slurs and some of them attacking women. We had one, for example, remember attacking a lady in a shop that he went to that was not even a very morally upright place to be. But, we would have one standard from him. So, and of course, now we have our children, they look up to these gentlemen, especially our boys. And then when the world starts going crazy, we start saying, oh, the mothers are not raising. So we need to really up the standards and up the ante, even for our male folk. So over to you.
Following that line about upping the standards, and sometimes I think it's important for women to also support each other and ensure that we are not being labeled. I'm in a male-dominated industry. And sometimes women find themselves having to take the back seat because they don't want to be labeled as aggressive. And in the case of Nigeria is Madam Tuno or Ovasabi, and we shy away from that. But we need to encourage women to really, and the response I have is, I'm not aggressive, I'm assertive, and I'm not going to be apologetic for being assertive and for understanding that I have a role to play. So can you use your example, because it takes a lot of guts for a woman to be in this position with our society and with everything that is happening. And here you are raising your hand, wanting to make a change, wanting to make a difference. So can you just speak with your personal experience, some of the struggles you've had to deal with from both female and male counterparts?
So to be honest, I think a lot of my challenges have actually come from some of my brothers in the space, not so much the women. Maybe because I've always been very outspoken, I've always spoken up. So in fact, for a lot of my friends, when I said to them, oh, I'm running for office, the general response was like, finally, and stuff. And, you talked about a lot of women doing a lot of things. And I want to reiterate that there are a lot of women working, especially in the NGO space. And then so much more in the caring sector, women are caregivers a lot of the time, not that to say men are not, So we really learn to be assertive. You're going to be a caregiver, even as a mom or someone who is looking after displaced people, or you're organizing so many things, organizing resources. So you have to be assertive. And I think, when I mentioned to some of my friends that I was going to run for office, I will never forget this. People always say, oh, women don't support women. That's not been my experience in life. From when I started working in banking, my mentors in banking were mainly women. Viviana Ku, Viviane Zenwa, Binta Musa, I have some of them on the call, and so on and so forth. Bola Adeshola, and so many of them. Those were my mentors in that space. Some of you may know them. And I continued in UNICEF, same thing. My bosses were women, both from Nigeria and outside of Nigeria. They nurtured me and they grew me. And then when I now said I wanted to run for office, the first donors to my political campaign were women. I think 2 or 3 women who just said, oh, wow, I'm going to support you. And they sent the money immediately, and that helped me begin to make the moves towards going to pick up my nomination form, and all that, and so on and so forth. So, when people say women don't support women, I don't think that is true. I think sometimes we discount how that support looks like. We sometimes think, oh, unless someone gives me $1 million check or whatever, but you and I know, we all know, if something happens to you, you're ill, the first people by your bedside are likely your female friends or relatives, right? To me, that's amazing support, So I've had the support. I've had women calling me saying, oh, how can we help? I've had them cook for me meals. I didn't ask for it. I've had them do so much, do research and so on and so forth, and do that, So absolutely, that's one aspect of it. I think some of the challenges I've faced really are more people within the party. We have a party system. And I want to encourage anyone, if you're going into politics, if you're not thinking about frontline politics, please get into party administration. That's where we get a lot of the problems, right? So, we tend to generally be a people who, not all of us, of course, but unfortunately, our educational system has made it such that we don't really pay attention to the detail. And you and I know God is in the detail, right? It's all in the detail. So, you see all these situations in parties where we're having court cases left, right, and center. It's simply because a lot of people, either they're not reading the rules or they read the rules and they don't want to follow them. And generally, I'm sorry to say, those are my brothers in the parties. In my party, for example, you sometimes have to call out people and say, this is the rule. Why are you doing it? This is what the constitution of the party says. Why is this going on like this? This is what that has said. Why is this happening? So it's so important for us to understand that, and I think for me, the challenges I've faced have been from people who don't want to follow the rules, or they don't know the rules because they didn't bother to read the rules and do compliance and do their due diligence. So for example, we are having your primaries, and sometimes, if you don't do your own background checks and reading yourself, you may be advised wrongly by your own party members as to what you're supposed to do, and if you don't follow the thing, sometimes you get in trouble with INEC, and then you may even get disqualified, So those are some of the challenges that I've faced, where sometimes there's not enough knowledge of the rules. Sometimes even just the way the whole system is administered is very, very challenging. Sometimes, of course, I've not experienced this with everybody, but a couple of people who just want to take money off you and not deliver what they said they will deliver. So for example, I won't mention, I have a number of local governments under my constituency, but one of them, I was trying to get an office, a party office. And, it was one of the party members or officials who said, oh, he was going to get this office for me. And he took the money and diverted it to something else, for example, right? So these are some of the integrity challenges that we face. And I think we've gotten so used to it in our environment that when you challenge it, people actually get shocked that you're challenging it, and then we hide behind this because the person is male and possibly older than you. We hide behind this person is disrespectful. How dare she speak to me like that? Does she know who I am? Blah, blah, blah. Bottom line, sir, you said you were going to deliver something. I gave you the money. You didn't deliver. Please, can I have my money back? Period. It now becomes you're disrespecting me, and so on and so forth. So it's really important. I think for me, the integrity issues, those are some of the things that I've seen. The lack of organization sometimes, the lack of discipline, and so on and so forth. So sometimes those are some of the things we see in the parties, but I hope that it's going to change. We're working on changing that, but absolutely party administration for me, that's where a lot of the headaches have come. Sometimes even things like people not paying attention to detail. So for example, I wrote my forms, sent it in, somebody was doing the data entry for INEC, and then they went and put my father's name, not my name. So my surname is double barrel. So they missed out my first name. I think some of it may just be people not paying attention. So it's little things like that, that for me I've found cumbersome. Then lastly, of course, you do have to be extremely careful and security conscious. So even right now, as I'm speaking to you, in one of our communities, in fact, in my area up in Kwandi local government, there's a conflict and a clash at the moment between two groups, two communities. So I couldn't even go to one of the communities yesterday. And sadly, who are the people doing this clashing? It's our brothers. And sometimes they're being fueled by some politicians who do not have very good motives. So, those are some of the challenges we face. You have to be very careful with your security. You have to be very security conscious as you go into the field, as you're going into, you're going into the community. Some of them are way in the interior. The roads are not that good. Some of them, the roads have been neglected for years. So they have literal craters there. So for me, again, those are the challenges, administrative challenges, again, brought about largely by some people who just refuse to do their jobs. So it's very important that we're all doing our work and doing it diligently.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, are you ready?
I'm ready, yeah. I have a few questions for It Has Happened. Because it's about to happen.
Yes, amen to that.
Yes, one is personal and the other is a bit general.
Sure.
You are running for a seat in the Federal House.
Yes.
This on the platform of ADC.
Yeah.
Do you think you are going to win?
I believe I'm going to win.
What about this issue of parties like yours not having structure and the other parties having structure?
I'll borrow from the Labour Party and tell you that the structure is the people. So we did some months ago, before I really started going in and doing my consultations, we'd already done some studies, some polling to find out, okay, where did I stand? Where was I with name recognition? And I was actually third favorite behind the two big parties to win. And the reason that was I've worked in that space for a long time. I've worked in that community. I've worked with displaced people. And then, of course, when we had a lot of the terror attacks, by terrorist headsmen, I was very vocal in that area. And we went in and we're taking relief materials and we were just talking about the situation. So I had some name recognition. So people were like, oh, if she comes in and she really does the work and she talks to us and whatever, we'll give her a vote. Again and again, even yesterday, as I went to Adipo, we call it Adipo London, that's the headquarters of the constituency. As I went in there yesterday, again, I was being told we're not interested in voting for parties, we're voting for candidates. We're looking for people who will work for us. Because the people who are there, they've disappointed us. Unfortunately, it's the sad story of you come, you promise things, they go off to Abuja and sit there. And then when it's time for elections, the person who is the rep or whoever comes in, brings a grader, a few months, 4 years, nothing has happened. And then they start grading one road. So one of the constituents was actually complaining to me bitterly about that. So you have a number of those things. So we're working, I have an initiative. We're also doing some community work. We've got over 100 volunteers who are actually already pushing and working. So the people for me are the structure, but you do have to do your work. Whether you like it or not, on the day of election, you will need what we call structure. Structure simply, you need to have people who will be at those polling units as your agents and make sure that things are done properly. Now, in my own constituency, I have over 500 polling units. So I need to do a lot of work to make sure that I have representation at those polling units. Thankfully, we're working as a tag team in my party. I have 2 other people who are running within my constituency for State House of Assembly and so on and so forth. So, you have all that. So we're pushing. One of the things I tell my people, when people tell me, oh, good luck, especially when I come to the constituency and they say, oh, we're praying for you, we wish you victory. I say, pray for you, but pray for yourselves, because you've seen Jackie that wants to work for you. So if I win, it's your luck, because we're going to do this work and we're going to fix this thing by God's name. So, by God's grace. So yeah, so that's it. I've got amazing dreams and plans. We're working on them. Just things we want to legislate on, even at the National Assembly, looking at the oversight functions. What kind of oversight functions should we be doing and having? I think one of the things people don't realize is how important the National Assembly is, because they're the check and balance on the executive. And if you have one that is, unfortunately, as they've complained, if you have one that's rubber stamp, the country is going to go through so much hell, which we are seeing from the last 8 years. They offer token resistance or whatever, or they're susceptible to being bought or bribed with inducements. Then you're in trouble, because then you've lost your voice. You have no one to really speak for you. So I'm here. I'm the voice my people can trust, and we're here. I'm here to work for them, and I'm working to win, basically.
Okay, but why was it the ADC that you chose to go into? That's question number 1. Question number 2 is, what would it take to have a woman president in Nigeria? What do you think?
Okay, so for me, APC, my dad is a big chieftain in one of the big parties. And he said to me, why did you come to our party? I said, Baba, I want to work for my people, 1. 2, if I come to your party, you won't give me the ticket. Let's be honest. Why? Because there's so many interests, entrenched interests, who are, it's my turn. Oh, I've been doing this. And I said, to be honest, you guys have your party, you've been serving you've been doing whatever. There are people in it, there's a long queue. Even if you're the chieftain and I come there, that's 1. 2, unfortunately, the character of the people, the people that you work with, you want to work with people that are your tribe. And when I say tribe, people who share the same values with you, the same aspirations. Unfortunately, the people in those bigger parties, they're not my tribe in that sense. That's because I don't want a situation where I win, I come in and I say, look, I want to do some serious work here. And somebody's sending me a note saying, I'm the godfather, I helped you, whatever. When you get to whatever, the constituency funds, you must give me the contract, even though I'm not the one qualified to do the job. You know what I mean? Or things like that. And I told my dad, I said, even if you people give me that ticket, I'm sorry. You might let me work, your party people will not let me work, because they'll be coming, it's payback time. So I went to a party that would allow me the room to do the work. They're a smaller party, of course, they want to prove themselves. And a party that was only too happy to once they saw someone ready to work, who was ready to put in the work and had a track record, they're like, okay, let's do this. Let's have you on in the primaries, and let's have you represent us in this election. So that's one. What would it take to have a female president? I think it will take all goodwill, well-meaning Nigerians, people who really want a change. Because let's face it, 62 years of independence, we've had male leadership, primarily male leadership at the top. And where are we? I think it's time we try something new. Of course, we've got all these cultural ideas, some of them a bit regressive, that I mentioned earlier about the man from Kwara who was saying in his party that they said they can never let a woman lead them. So you're going to have those pockets of resistance, and we're going to really have to fight, to work, and to keep on pushing and being persistent in saying, you know what, women can lead, women can deliver. And I think it's not so much about the position of leadership, because sometimes people look at that and think, oh, somebody's going to lead me. It's leadership. It's about the ego thing. It's about service. And maybe if we talked about leadership more as service and not so much about I'm coming to lead you and lord it over people. I don't think women do that generally. Some do, a few who don't have the character, the competence, and the capacity. But I think that more importantly, if we're offering ourselves to serve and are focused on that, then we will have to now begin to really think, okay, let's have a female president. I must say, sadly, even the so-called leading democracy of the world, America, has not been able to produce one as yet. But we've also seen other countries where we consider culturally not as democratic, like Pakistan produced female leaders, or even India, we had Indira Gandhi way back when. So, we just have to keep pushing and we have to do the work. But I think more importantly for me as a leader or someone who is aspiring to come into it's about service. It's about offering yourself for service. So I try to think less about that leadership thing and the titles. So even when people are saying, oh, honorable somebody, you know how we are with these titles. You call me honorable E, I say, my honorable constituents, because really I'm here to serve. It's not about me coming to, be number one, unless I'm going to be number one in service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think women have to do quite a lot more mobilization of themselves, if they don't mind. They say you are 51 or 52% of our population. So by sheer number, if you all register to vote and decide to vote for Air, she should become the next president of Nigeria. But somehow women don't seem to motivate themselves. And I think you've allowed yourselves to take the back seat for too long, too long, and just allowed yourselves to be a bit bullied by men. So I think you also need to work very, very hard on mobilizing yourselves and breaking that glass, or that seemingly glass ceiling. And I think the ladies in America should do exactly the same thing and break that glass ceiling and compete favorably. Nancy Pelosi, she did quite a great job in the House, and so on and so forth. They must stand toe to toe and compete very favorably and let the men know that they can do as well. You may need to lose a few privileges or rights, maternity leave. You might need to not insist on it or walk around it and things like that. And just don't allow yourself to be bullied. It's even interesting that.
No, absolutely. We have a work to do, and we're on it. Yeah. We're on the matter.
Yeah, even in my firm here, we wanted to recruit some women the other day, about a year or 2 years ago. And there was a lady that we interviewed, and she was pregnant, no doubt, and she did very well. My head of HR is a lady. And when it was time to recruit the girl, she said she's not going to recruit her. And I said, why? She said, the girl is pregnant. I said, what do you expect a girl to do? She's not going to get pregnant. So why are you victimizing her because she's pregnant? And you're a lady. and you are saying that she's pregnant. I say, well, if she gets pregnant, blah, blah, blah. The other day she was saying, then if she has this baby, she mustn't have another baby for another 2 years. I said, not on my watch. I said,
absolutely, yeah.
She can have a baby every year if she wants, you know.
I think we have to expand the horizon and widen our perspective, because I worked in UNICEF, you know, women there have babies all the time, you know, and all they have is they have a creche, they have a room. We just flex things up, you know, for the women, you know, so you don't even have to give up your maternity leave, you know, but maybe the workplaces. And that's one of the policies in UNICEF we're pushing for a long time, and I hope to push that when I get into the house, is, you know, to be able to say, you know, let's expand this. How can we make this happen? In my organization, it's, you know, if you have a baby, you can bring the baby to work. You know, we have a room, you put the baby there, go and breastfeed the baby as much as you like. That's your, you know, but my own is deliver the goods and deliver the work. So, you know, I think it's really also about us expanding the world to accommodate all of these things, you know, because if men had, I mean, now the world, we're having people, their paternity leave now. So, you know, we're looking at, so, yeah.
There's some people who ask some questions. There's a lady called Anjus, and then there's a lady called Noyo. I think it's a lady. Please unmute yourself and ask your questions, after which we'll play a video of something that happened in a parliament in West Africa, and then we'll have you speak to that video. Anjus, please, and then Noyo after. Please ask your questions one after the other.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And thank you for this. Thank you for this forum. So
thank you for joining.
No problem. So I'm calling from Nigeria, and as I listened to you, I was thinking in my head how wonderful it would be to have 30% of the population of our women to wear this hat that you're wearing. And because I've joined a lot of women forum, and we keep saying the same thing. So my question is, for the women that have been successful in politics, the question is, what strategies did they use? One. Number two, I believe because we're in Nigeria, the culture that we find ourselves, the only way I believe that Nigerian women or women will be more prominent in the political arena is for us to have to have men that can fight that fight for us. And the question is, would they want to? Are they capable of even doing it, right? So for everything that you've said, as wonderful as they all sound, and I'm sure you've had your own challenges, obviously, and you probably will have more, but I'm pretty sure you have solutions to all of them. How do we get our men to really fight that fight for us? And what strategies, those women that you named, what strategies did they use to get to where they were? And how, you know, it makes me really happy to hear about all of their accomplishments and where they found themselves and where they are today. So I really want you to, you know, zero in on that and let's figure out the way forward, because we can't keep saying the same thing every 4 years. Every 4 years, we're saying the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Should we take a few and then I can speak to them?
Yeah, Noyo, please. Please unmute yourself. Then Stephen and Champ. We'll take those 4, and then you can speak to them.
Okay, good morning or good evening. This is Noyo. Jumoke made reference to something about, it seems from my listening to what you have stated so far, we have a serious problem, like wanting the men to always validate what we do. She asked that why do the women need to have take permission from the men? What I'm thinking, and it's going to be a question, and also I'll just tell you what I'm thinking, is that, as Pastor has said, we are not really mobilizing ourselves. We are not really empowering ourselves as women. We are relying on the men. And I would say to an extent it's for selfish reasons. Some people think that it's just like bringing an old man now to run, and the young guys are behind who want to exploit the old man. That's the way it is. Some women, they're running to the men. They want the men to validate them, thinking that they can get to certain positions with the men, approving of them. Whereas we need to work within ourselves, empower ourselves, and let them know that we are really strong. So what are you doing in this direction to empower the women, that we can stand with other women? When you look at how they fought for our independence and everything, Mama Rasom Kuti's mom, they were very popular people. They had voices, and people had, she and the other women were involved, and people listened to them. So what are we going to do? Because culturally, as the lady before me said, we are dependent on the men, but we need to break away from that because things are not working for us. You made reference to the woman who was killed in Kaduna State. Yes, because they know when they get that woman, they are getting the family, they are getting the community. When she's able to penetrate through the family, through the women, please, we need to do more with the women. We need to encourage one another. Instead of fighting and tearing down ourselves, we need to work, just from the local level, continue to build up the women, and they will see how powerful we really are. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to take a third question? Then I can answer that.
Yeah, I think Stephen Ipalibo, please.
Stephen, please unmute yourself. Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. First and foremost, EA Jonathan Icheva, we're very thankful that you were able to honor this invitation and you're here. My question basically is this. Are you concerned about the security issues that has to do with female candidates? Part of the reasons a lot of Nigerians don't, as a matter of fact, come upon the platform for legislative or political responsibility is a threat to life. Of recent, we heard about the Labour Party women's leader that was unfortunately killed. The investigation is ongoing. Are you concerned with regards to the security issues that has to do, especially with female candidates? And do we as a people, how do we react to some of these threats of political actors that leads to the fact that people's lives are snuffed off, and then the country itself does not have any legal background to be able to bring to book in terms of justice to those people who perpetrate these kinds of heinous, wicked, devilish act of murder and then criminality, so to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your questions. And just, you were asking about what has made us step forward and the difference, and, and how we can just begin to fight more for ourselves, if I'm not mistaken. I think the truth is that it takes courage to run. We all have our fears, it's a sacrifice as well, because of course, you leave your business, you leave your work, or rather that suffers because you now spend more time doing this. But the truth is, if you really believe in something, and I truly believe that Nigeria can be much better, and I'm 48. I don't want to be, our life expectancy, for example, has been cut short. Nigeria's life expectancy on average, in Benue, life expectancy is 48. In Nigeria, across the average, I think is now 54. So it translates in real terms, right? That's what we are seeing all our friends dropping, no? 51, 52, 53, 54, and this is the reality of those statistics, of that data. And when you look at those things, I look at my parents' life, for example, but I'm very blessed to have both my parents alive. They're in their 70s, but life is tough for them. Then in Makudi, to get even an MRI done is wahala. You have to take them to Abuja, which is 5 hours away. As you're going to Abuja, you're praying, nobody kidnaps them between here and Lafia. This one, that one. Then you wake up in the morning, there's no water in your borehole, right? Or rather, there's no running water. The water board has not provided. Your borehole has sunk. Then the children around or the youth around, there's cult groups around. You're praying, they don't, we all know what we're dealing with. And I looked at that and I said, look, I'm not going to be 70, God keeping me, and be suffering like this. It's not going to happen. So let me take my time now and fight for a better community and a better Nigeria. And it's from the strength of that conviction that I've decided to run. I've worked with displaced people for the last 10, 11 years. And again, you see the same thing, you know, just increased displacement, more and more displacement, more conflict that's badly managed, more badly managed disaster. We saw the thing with the floods, you know, and once people get displaced, it's very hard for them to get out. And again, you're looking, you're trying, you're plugging the holes. It's not that women are not fighting. We're all fighting in different ways. We're working in these NGO spaces, but we need to scale up our activities. And I think, yeah, there are men who you know, like Pastor Itwa and so many others, they're real he for she's, and they're fighting as well. And I don't think, for me, it's not about, you know, pushing the men out of the way, or so to speak. It's expanding the space and getting in there and taking your own stand. I'm not asking for permission. In the party, I didn't ask for permission. I showed up, I said, this is what I wanted to do. And if we have disagreements in the party, I hear the other person, it's all about mutual respect, but I go with my conviction of what is right to do, and we go forth and we do it. I think for women, for us as women, again, there's so many women out there doing great things. You have the feminist manifesto groups, Dr. Abiola Ikiyode, and so many NGO groups under that group, Professor Ezilo. They've been fighting for women for a long time and for children. Check again, who is doing the work on rape, sexual violence, gender-based violence, children being abused? They're mainly women. So I think as women too, we can be very hard on ourselves and put ourselves, we're doing the work. What we now need to do is to scale it up and begin to expand into the political sphere and be consistent. So yes, we keep presenting these bills and we keep pushing, and we will keep pushing. I think we need to take a leaf from that persistent widow. If you're a Christian and you read scripture, I think it's Luke. Pastor Itwa, you will help me here because, you know, I think it's Luke 8, if I'm not mistaken. And you know, this woman just kept going. She wasn't begging this guy. She was saying, look, I'm here. I'm human. I'm part of the human race. I have grievances. I need you to address them. You know, it's either that, or as Dele Farotimi says, it's either your vote or you're gone, right? Now, we women, we're not going to pick up arms and start shouting and agitating. So the only thing we can do is to keep asking. We have to get creative, maybe. One of the things I came up with some friends the other day, we were saying maybe we should start doing prayer vigils around. Sure, we can pray very well in Nigeria as Nigerian women. Maybe we start just going around the government houses and legislature and just be praying and carry a prayer roundness, what you might call it, prayer walks, Jericho style, throughout the year until they accede to our demands. But we do need more consistency. We do need to scale up. We do need to be persistent. I think we should celebrate our victories, but push on. Noyo, thank you for your question. I think, you know, again, it's about service. It's about saying, I'm coming here to serve and I'm going to give it my very, very best and just going for it. Again, like I said, we're doing a lot. Women are doing a lot. Women are carrying a lot. If you look at COVID, women were the caregivers. At the same time, they were the ones organizing food drives, so on and so forth. Not to say men were not doing that, you know. Look at NSAS, you know. I was one of those women at the toll gate. Some of our sisters, I'm sure here, one of my friends, Ireti Bakare Yusuf, we were at the toll gate giving food to those children. It was mothers that organized and went on the streets. When the fathers finally got their own act together and started saying, okay, they're going to do their protest. The massacre at Lekki Toll Gate happened. The event at Lekki Toll Gate happened. Now, who were at the forefront of denying those events? Again, it was some of our brothers, you know, and we didn't stick to the streets. The women are still fighting, you know. Who did the live broadcast? DJ Switch. Who are some of the people shouting the most? It's the women. So I think we need to understand is, you know, we keep pushing. We keep pushing because it's either that, or, you know, we come up with non-violent resistance methods and so on and so forth, right? It's either that, or the other option is you are going the way of violence. We're not going that way. Women are not wired that way. We don't want to work that way because We suffer most when there's conflict. We know what happens. So we're very careful. We don't go that way. So that's why sometimes it seems like we're asking, we're begging. What else are we going to do now? What else are we going to do? Absolutely. You know, we will keep pushing on the front of, you know, someone was asked, I think you asked about empowering the women. Absolutely. Again, there's so many programs. I sit on the board of Grooming Center. They're doing a lot of work empowering women. And you need economic power, because with that, you have children to feed, you have all the different communities to look after. And we still have to, you're doing the economic empowerment, you're still pushing for rights. Let's not forget, I'm sure we've all heard of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Bill, right? That was put forth by Abike Dabiri, you know, with a lot of push from female-led organizations in this country, if I'm not mistaken. You know, this work was done maybe, when was she in the House? I can't remember, maybe 10 years ago, and we're reaping the benefits now. You know, VAP is almost domesticated in almost every state, and that's why we can have people prosecuted, and we're now beginning to see sex offenders registered. Again, another amazing initiative by the wonderful Erelu Bisi-Fayemi, you know, who's been leading work in this space for a long time, even before her husband became a government person. You know, so the work is going on. Maybe the way we need to approach it, it needs to take a much more creative and sometimes maybe more dramatic bent, you know, and all of that. But women have tried different things, and we will keep trying, you know. But let's not also forget there's a price to be paid, you know, and we've known this for years. Even in the UK, when women were fighting, the suffragettes were fighting for the right to go to school, some of them took extreme methods. Some of them were throwing themselves in front of the horse-drawn carriages of legislators asking for the right? And some of them died, you know, and we're seeing these things, you know. So a time will come if we need to naked ourselves, as they say, and go and stand in front of wherever we need to stand to insist and demand. That's what we're going to do, you know. So we're not begging, we're not asking for permission. We have a voice, we're using it. We may need to scale it up, we may need to be very persistent. And again, I will ask also, as women, you know, we will support each other. I think we need to take it higher. You know, if it's the 1,000 naira you need to donate every week, we need consistent funding for those kinds of causes. Then let's do it. Because sometimes too, those are some of the challenges that we face, the lack of resources. You know, there's so many situations, things happening. So thank you for that. I hope that sort of speaks to some of that. Stephen, thank you for your question. I think we're all concerned about security. For even in non-election times, women face a lot of gender-based violence. We saw, for example, the case of that young lady, I think, was it Umoren, who went for a simple job interview and got raped and killed, right? And it took her friend on Twitter to even get to the bottom of these things. So those risks are there, you know, but you do have to take informed risk. You also have to, I mean, for me, every day I go into the community is a risk. I mean, this is a place where my father's house has been burnt twice. Our family, so as I'm talking to you, I don't have a family house in my village, you know, burnt twice due to some politically whatever clash. Even now, as I'm talking to you, as of last night again, there was another whatever there. So every time I go there, you know, it's prayers and just being careful and taking the risk that you take. Someone says you do not need to be naked before taking action. My sister, the ones in Liberia, before they stopped that war, those women, I hear they stripped to, I went and demonstrated. People were like, okay, enough is enough. We don't want to see naked old women here. Let's stop the war. You know, sometimes those are some extreme measures you have to take. There are others we can take, of course. You know, I was just using that as a point. But, you know, those are risks that you take. You take them in faith. Of course, you're not being you're not foolhardy. You don't go out when you know, like, for example, I got the warning about that community not to go there. Of course, I wasn't going to go there, right? And all of that. But one thing I learned from my father, who has faced his own risk at the time too, he was kidnapped, assassins were sent after him. And the amazing thing was the assassin turned to my father and told him, I know the person that sent me. I'm not going to kill you. I'll tell you who it is. Go and make peace with him. And he did. Right? And when my father, the following week, he started going again to that community, I had to ask him, I said, what's wrong with you? Where are you going? They kidnapped you last week. They tried to kill. What's going on here? And he said to me, he said, look, I'm not doing anything bad. I've not killed anyone. I've not done anything to anybody. You know, my conscience is clear. I take my precautions, but these people are not going to stop me from doing what I need to do. You know, life, you cannot predict how you're going to die, you know, and unfortunately, some people like Victoria paid the price, Victoria Chintex. And sometimes that's how it is. That's how it's gonna be, you know. They met her in her house. It's not like she was out at 3 a.m. doing whatever, you know. And funny enough, my dad, this thing happens to him maybe almost 15 years ago or so. And he's still here. In fact, he has other health challenges he's worrying about, you know, and he's still standing. Others have not made it. You know, people like Nelson Mandela, they took the risk. You know, Steve Biko didn't, you know, but that's part of the struggle. You know, so we pray for safety, we take informed risk, and we're concerned about security. But what we need to do as a people is stand up and demand better security and better governance. And that's what this is all about, you know, and call for accountability. You know, this woman was killed. We need to find her killers, and they need to be brought to justice. And if they were sponsored, they should find the sponsors of those killers as well. I think that's what we should be demanding for, and we should probably be demonstrating for that as well. So thank you. I'll take the next round of questions if we still have time, if that's okay.
Okay, we just have time for this set of questions. We'll show our movie briefly, and then we'll round up. So great. Champ Ajose, Chineye, Frederick, and Etemo Glover. Quick, straight to the question, please. No need for any compliments or the comment and all that. And then I'll ask Air to answer them very promptly also, so that we can make some time and then show the little clip and then conclude. Please go ahead, unmute yourself.
I guess I am first, Pastor Itua.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the good presentation. I am of the opinion that equal opportunity is good, but it does not guarantee equal outcome. And I think women, because if we're saying there should be equal people, equal in representation, even in governance, like 50% women, I'm not sure we are doing the country justice, in the sense that if 50 women come out and 10 women come out, 50-50 will not work in the best interest of women. More women need to come out to contest. They need to come out to vie for office. Women are 49.4% in the population in Nigeria. The population. If women come out and women vote for them, they don't have to ask men to give. They don't have to ask men for permission for them to be in governance. So I wouldn't mind voting for a woman if she is competent. I would be happy to vote for Okonjo Iweala any day as a president if she contests for office, but she is not at the moment. So my point is, a lot of women need to come out to vie for office, and at the same time, women need to support women. Go to political parties. You go to political rallies. There are more women there than men. So if women are supporting women, we should have. I don't care if we have 70% of women in governance, as long as women are coming out. So they should not be asking men for support when they can just ask for women to support them and then be successful. Now the question is, we all know there's danger in Nigerian politics as it is. It is very, very hard, and for every success there will be sacrifices. So for a woman to come out for office, to be in governance, she has to sacrifice a lot, because naturally women are naturals. So how can these women that eventually want to come out mitigate against these things? For example, the danger involved with Nigerian politics as it is. That's the situation we are in Nigeria. And again, being able to take care of the family as well, because women are more naturals than men. I rest for now.
Okay, so that's your question, is it? How we can mitigate the risk? Okay, thank you very much. Next question, please.
Next person, please. Frederick or Chine.
Chine.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Great session so far. So my question is, I read a book and I met this lady called Aisha Osori. She ran for office and she almost swore not to go back into politics, right? Because of what she faced. Her book is Love Does Not Win Elections. So
yeah,
basically the conversation we had was around how do we get a critical mass of people to go in, as opposed to having just a few women going in and getting overwhelmed by the system, right? So that's my question, because I feel like the issue of the value system, when you get in there, you lose yourself because you're going against the tide. So how do we get a critical mass? And then this question he asked about de-risking politics as well is very apt. And how do we take a more proactive measure or strategy? Because you see that, like in the Aba women's riots, right? Women actually stood up and things changed. They became warrant chiefs, they became heads of courts and things like that. So is there a more proactive stance that we can take beyond advocacy and, because we have all these NGOs, Elect Her, all these people, they've been doing a lot of stuff, but we can't really see the impact, measurable impact. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Frederick?
Thank you, everyone. I am very interested in this program because first I did my youth service in Benue State in 1995, and I am an advocate for women in politics. I just want to say that we have a lot to achieve if the so-called first ladies in Nigeria, if they stand up to support women, they will go a long way in promoting women in politics. I did not use that word so-called to denigrate them, but the fact is that the office of first ladies in Nigeria is the only office in Nigeria that is not in the constitution. They don't have budgets, but they have so much money and power. So that shows that they can do a lot. Now, we are talking about, we're in a period where Nigeria recolored or redesigned and Naira. I expect the first ladies, what the first ladies do, they do not continue with what their predecessor did in terms of pet projects. But when they come with new ideas, so there's no continuity. We're talking about recoloring or redesigning the Naira. This is a time where I expected, for example, the president, the first lady of Nigeria, to speak for the redesign of the 50 Naira note. If you pick the 50 Naira note, you will see 7 human figures, 1 woman and 7 men. Why? That is the basis of discrimination. Since the formation of the central bank in 1959, we've had just 1 woman as central bank governor, and she was there in an active capacity, Sarah Alade. 2.7 million women have been displaced in the Middle Belt and in the Northeast since the insurgency began. So if you look at all of these things, we have 6.4% of women in the Nigerian legislature compared to the 93.6 men. So when you look at all of these things, you start to wonder, what are the women in power doing? The first ladies, why are they not standing up? Do they need to have an organization of women in politics for them to use that opportunity to empower women? When women are undergoing serious situations or conditions like torture, killing and all that, why are women not coming out? I mean, women in power, why are they not coming out to speak? Instead of spending precious time in pursuing people that wrote something against them on Twitter, they are going to court. So the summary of what I'm just saying is that women in power should use their position to promote women, whether from the federal, the state, and the local government. Once they start to do this, there'll be more inclusion for women. That is just what I have to say. It's not a question, but a comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's look at the last person. She's dropped off.
I think she dropped off.
It was a lady. It was a lady. She dropped off. And I wanted to hear her. Okay. If she surfaces again.
She says she's still here, but she can't raise her hand. Her name is Henrietta. And Henrietta, can you, is there a way?
Unmute yourself and speak. Ethemo. Unmute yourself and speak if you're still here, very quickly.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, Henrietta Oli.
Chineye.
Chineye.
Yes.
All right. Kedu?
Adema. So I'm wondering if Iya appears to have worked in very sane environments, in a very decent environments. I don't know if she's ready for the ruggedness of our politics. I watched a senator a few years back bully an elderly man's wife, a co-senator, telling her that if she doesn't shut up, he's going to get her pregnant. That infuriated so many women across Nigeria. Is she ready for that kind of ruggedness and indecency, going by her background from where she says she has worked? And then secondly, I admire her boldness to want to step in from a party that is not so popular. Some people like Wellington tried that and they got frustrated. At the time he did that, I was in another polling unit. And because of him, I went to that polling unit with a cooler of rice to attend to everybody that was there. I wasn't voting for, I wasn't campaigning for anybody, so that we would at least count our votes properly and ensure that things went well. But I got frustrated because at a point, the party agents were bought over. They looked the other way while vote counting was going on. And that is why some of these parties, they tell you that you don't have structure. Those are the structures. In my very before, after eating my food, all of us, both the witnesses, unofficial witnesses, volunteer witnesses, and party agents, everybody ate. And then the party agents of the parties that don't have structures looked the other way while counting and collating were going on. The party that we all thought was going to win, lost. We saw what was going on. But of course, I'm a lone voice. I'm not an official voice. I was just an observer. I don't know if Iya is ready for that. He's too crooked here. He's too indecent. Those are my two questions.
All right, very good. Yeah, please respond sharp to those questions, and then we will wind down. Thank you. Unmute yourself, yeah? Unmute yourself. We can't hear you. You are muted. Yeah. You are muted. You are muted. Unmute yourself.
I think Pastor Lou has to make her co-host again so that she can unmute. Okay, she can unmute now. She can unmute now.
Unmute.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, I dropped off for about a few seconds, so I think that's what happened. Did Edemore ask her question? Because I dropped out, so I wasn't sure if there was a question from Edemore.
Edemore, we're looking for her. We didn't find her. Is she still on the platform?
Oh, I heard her voice actually. I heard someone say it's me.
She's unmuted.
Okay, let's ask her a question. Edemore, I knew. Ask your question. Last question. Going.
Okay.
Unmute her, please. Olu.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Pastor Itwa. Good evening, everyone, and Iye. Very excited to see you on this platform, Iye. I've been watching you over the years, and we're friends. I see how, my question is quite similar to the previous speaker. For me, is just the alarming rates of corruption, you have in the parties. And I know that there'll be some level of expectation for you to get, your hands dirty. So what's your strategy to overcome corruption? What's your strategy to remain true to yourself and your principles in all of this politics that you're getting into? Thank you.
Great. Okay, so thank you for those questions. I think the question around how can we mitigate risk, I see someone also said something, you know, sometimes we have these conversations and it's like some guys are saying, oh, women, it's like we're women on our own. We're in one community, the women are not leading, it's affecting everybody, right? We're suffering all and all that. So the question, I'll throw back that, how are the men also working to mitigate the violence against women? How are we talking to the youth in our communities to not get involved in these things? Because the people doing these killings are not coming from the sky. So I'll throw that back to the person who asked that question. You know, I think I'd already addressed the fact you have to take calculated risk and really figure out, you know, whatever, and not be reckless. But again, I think also we need more hands on deck, and I'm calling on the brothers, particularly, you know, if you're not getting involved and mentoring young men in your community to stop them from getting involved in these kinds of things, we're going to have more and more violence. That's just the reality of it. So it's everybody's work. We're all need hands on deck. Chinanye, thank you for your question. And yes, IE's book on love does not win elections. We do need a critical mass. And I think that's happening. There are many support groups. Yes, we have Elect Her. Maybe you missed when I talked about the SPPG and how we have a community there, and they've really been very influential in bringing a lot of us to the fore. Like I said, they had a class of 300 students doing politics, studying politics in the last 2 years. And of those 355 have emerged. So we definitely need more people going in, but it does take people stepping up. I remember just even reaching out to a few people, both male and female, young people, not so young people, asking them to run for office in my party in Benue. A lot of them shied away, and that's because of some of these challenges. For many years, we've told ourselves, politics is a dirty game? And it is, you know, it can be, it's not always. You know, it's just the brand we've seen here more. You know, but the truth is, nothing good comes without us having to fight and sacrificing. And the question is, how many of us are ready to make that sacrifice? So yes, I agree, we do need the critical mass. People are working, but we need more people on deck. I think Frederick was asking a question. For me, I just wrote here when he was talking about it, I said, again, let's own this thing. It's not just about women. The fact that we're pushing for more women to be in politics is not for women only. It's not for benefiting women only. So when we're saying, oh, women should vote for women, if women, no, we all need to vote. Women vote for men. The other thing too, we're talking about the First Lady, it will help us a lot too if men of the right character, competence, and capacity come out. It will help us if men, the largely male delegates in the parties, stop taking those bribes. It will also help us too if we call out each other, because we know these guys, right? They're not in a bubble now. So if we begin to call out people in our communities, I think it will help us to. So we're all in this. Let's all own it. You know, the fact that women are not represented enough is not a situation in isolation. It's brought about by several factors: the economic situation, the way the country is, the intimidation of women, and these things are not being caused by women alone. So we all have to own it and take on that situation. Chinanye asked the question. I think you didn't hear me when I said I've been working with IDPs in this space for the last 12 years. I'm no stranger to rough places, to dangerous places. I've been in situations, I don't bother to talk about a lot of them. I've been in places, you know, I don't really, whatever. And if I'm on the house, someone threatens me, I'm a karate green belt. I'm growing into it. I'm working towards my black belt. So if he tries to slap me, at least I can deflect and run away. So there are, you know, I mean, come on, you have to be tough, you know. So yeah, I've worked in civilized places, but in the last 12 years, I've been working with people who are victims of Boko Haram. I've been in some of those, I've been in places where terrorists have killed. I've seen the dead bodies. I've been in those places where they were even in the neighboring community. So there are things, I mean, come on, you know. So I'm not saying I'm immune to those challenges, but the reality is I came back to Nigeria 2013, and that was it. Yes, we deflect and run away. That's how we're trained. You don't stay there and continue fighting, you know, unless you can win it. Then Temori, absolutely very good question about, you know, just how to deal with the corruption. To be honest, even though we're saying these things, the terrain is changing. And I want to say thank God for Peter Obi, you know, because he came in and just changed the dynamic. So for the first time, some of us politicians actually have the liver to say to some people when they come up to us asking for money, you know, if we're not in the Labour Party, we can say to them, don't you say obedience? They're raising money for their candidate now. You raise money for me. Instead of you asking, I don't even have money to give you. We're fundraising, things are tough. So it is changing very slowly. In terms of the corruption and so on and so forth, you know, again, the system is changing. They put out that BVAS and the new system to try and curb it. It's not necessarily foolproof, I think, but we do have a lot of work to do. And back to Chinenye's point, I think Banky W, maybe his first outing, you know, he went to the PDP because they had structure. Structure also takes some money. I'm working with volunteers. I'm working with people who are ready. They don't need me to pay them to be my polling agents. And of course, now we've learned some of the tricks. We've heard some of the tricks from some of the bigger parties on how they mess those things up. One of the bigger politicians last year even confessed before he died and was telling how they bribe everybody, including INEC officials. So they're exposing their secrets and we're aware, you know, so we're getting wiser. We're evolving strategies to deal with that and curb the corruption. But of course, one thing I've realized, if you have to bribe an official to try and get some whatever, you know, I think that will be tainted and it will mess up your outing. So for me, it's something I've said I'm not going to do. I will still do my work and I'll still lead my people and serve them. So it's not a big deal. I won't offer those bribes. It's just not in me. Okay, so thank you. I think those are all the questions, if I'm not mistaken. So there was a video.
Yeah, Olu, do we still have time for this video or do we just try and close?
You can quickly have it. It's just 2 minutes.
Yeah.
2 minutes? Okay, quickly.
The Honorable Member for Banjul South.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I would first of all like to thank the committee clerks of this August House for the great work that they have done by spending the whole night in this August Assembly preparing a report for us. I thank you, clerks of the National Assembly. Honorable Speaker, I think looking at the Honorable Minister's statement and looking at the budget, I think that our government does not love this country. They do not have the feeling to nurture our children in this country. Honorable Speaker, $6 billion in salaries alone, not in administrative cost. Honorable Speaker, and we say we are a poor country. Honorable Speaker, the median age in this country is 19 years old. We should consider the life and the livelihood of our children. We should be investing in education. We should be investing in health rather than paying ourselves, feeding ourselves out of the poor people of this country. I will start with this August Assembly, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, to see the salary of the Honorable Speaker increased from 658 million to 658,000 to 1,560,000, I feel ashamed to call myself an honorable member. Honorable Speaker, I gave myself for service. I did not give myself for the poor people to feed me and my family. Honorable Speaker, when I saw this, I felt embarrassed. I did not want to come to this budget session because I said to myself, there is no need, because we are just sharing the cake in our pockets, going home, feeding ourselves. Not only that, but to see the responsibility allowance the residential allowance, the roving allowance, and all those for the representatives of the people. It is embarrassing for me to go back to my poor constituency and tell them that the meager resources of this country, I am paid that much at your expense. I took an oath, Honorable Speaker, to serve and to give back to my society, not to enrich myself. And even if I go to the Constitution, Honorable Speaker, it says that we shouldn't deliberately enrich ourselves. And increasing our salaries is deliberately.
Interesting. I wish that could happen in Nigeria. Jumoke is clapping. Jumoke, that lady sounds like you.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah, that video has been making the rounds.
Yeah.
That's Honorable Tuma Njai. I think she represents Banjul South in the Gambia.
Yeah.
I found that a very interesting video. You had some questions for me on it?
Well, all I'm saying is that when you get to the house, you have to reduce the salaries.
Yeah, funny enough, that's one of my main convictions. Now, the question is, how do you do this? And how do you get the buy-in of the people who are benefiting from this jumbo pay? I think I hear that she suffered quite a bit of backlash on that. I hear that she's been suspended since she made that statement and so on and so forth. And she's being hounded by her colleagues. I don't know, I've not followed the story, but that's what I've heard. So of course, when you push out things like that, you will get pushback because you're trying to take money, right, out of people's pockets. I mean, I hear some of the salaries are ridiculous, right? And funny enough, I was writing my legislative agenda on human capital investment and development, which is one of my areas of interest. And one of the things I talked about there is to strengthen corporate governance and oversight of the national budget, especially for the three arms, including the legislature, enhance the independence of the people that fix the salaries with a view to reducing the cost of governance and investing those savings. Now, that cost of governance also touches on the salaries and the allowances of legislators. Of course, when you do that, you're going to make a lot of enemies, even speaking on it. But it's the only sustainable way because we can't sustain this whole thing. I already have a plan also to set up a fund using some of those funds until they change it, which will belong to the constituency, and the constituency will take the decisions on how they spend that money. Because it's unconscionable to me that you are collecting, I heard some places is like over 20 million a month, as a legislator in a country as poor as this, and you're the highest paid in the world with our indices and human development indices the way they act. To me, that's, we need to invest that money elsewhere. And also it will help, we need more prudent lifestyles for public officials, because that's why some of us they seem like they've gone crazy. They're buying all kinds of cars and things like that, while the country continues to suffer, So, but like I expect, there'll be backlash. I mean, this woman is facing the backlash already. We don't deceive ourselves. If you're going to try and change a situation where people have been enjoying largesse and flenjoying, as we say, of these kinds of things, expect that you will get pushback, expect people to come after you, but I believe if you're doing the right thing and you're following your conviction and you're working to serve people, do your bit. I see a comment, someone said I'm fearless. I'm not, I do it afraid, but you do what is right, and you just pray and you trust, and let the chips fall where they may, but just do what is right. That's my belief. That's my faith. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we look forward to some good things coming out of the house when you come. Two things I want you to, when you get there, in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Two things I want you to speak to and then give us your closing remarks. Number one, Do you think we should have a unicameral house, just one house, as against having two houses? Number two, who is going to win the elections in 2023? You must tell us who. Thank you very much, and then give your closing remarks.
I think yes, I think we should have a unicameral house, and I think we should actually. I'm of the same opinion as Professor Remishonai. I think I saw her in the room earlier, where they should actually be part-time. You know, other countries do that. That whole go and sit there and you're voting all these massive allowances and whatever. You know, for goodness sake, we're too poor a country. I'm sorry. The cost of governance and the democratic system we run is too expensive. You know, and stuff like that. So we have a lot of work to do and a lot of thinking, and we need to restructure. So I really think that, and it's also on my legislative agenda interests, that this is one of the things that I think we should take care of. Who do I think is going to win the election? I know who I hope will win the election of the three. You know, the three candidates, I hope Peter Obi wins. Because he's just the one that seems to be able to speak the most to the issues that we have, and who seems to be able to guarantee much more equity, and is not running along religious, ethnic, whatever lines, and it's not coming from an extremely divisive place, and seems to have more of the character, the competence, and the capacity than the other bigger guys. But again, I don't know who will win it. You know, it's all God knows. You know, and stuff like that. We'll see.
Now you're frozen. Peter Obi's enemies have frozen you.
We bind them in Jesus' name.
Right. Anyway, I'd like to thank Ia very, very much for her candor, for her love, for her passion for Nigeria, and for standing up to fight for not just women, but to fight for righteousness in the land of Nigeria. She said she will not give a bribe, she will not induce votes and things like that. I think that is very commendable. I think we can give her a round of applause. I think we can do that. I think we can do that. I think we can do that. And I hope that she moves from this level to higher levels in Jesus' name. Let me thank everyone for coming. Let me thank especially Stephen Ipalibo, my good friend, for making it possible for Air to be here today. Thank you, Stephen. Please keep many more people coming, people who have the right tone and who are really interested in the emancipation of Nigeria and for leadership in Nigeria. Thank you very much. Jumoke, thank you for an awesome job. Thank you also, Sade, for your support and all the back engine rooms at the ALG. You people are doing phenomenal work. Pastor Tayo, I thank you very, very much. Pastor Sonny Enebi, I thank you very, very much indeed for all the awesome work. And of course, Olu Victor, who is so passionate about the ALG now. Thursday is a different day for him. Thank you all very, very much. God bless you all, and have a very good rest of the week and a very good weekend. And let me wish you all a Merry Christmas. Let me be the first to wish you a Merry Christmas by force and a prosperous New Year ahead. Thank you. God bless you.
Mr. Chairman, before we close, if I can just also make one comment, which is the power of allyship and what the men can do to support women. And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but it's so important when for the male allyship, for the men to also get up and support women, for them to use their gifts in nation building. So I want to applaud you, want to thank you for always providing that platform for women to get up and contribute their gifts to nation building. And hopefully there are many others like you that will come into this space and serve as allies in moving our nation forward. So thank you for what you do. And thank you for what you represent as well.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. God bless you all. Have a very wonderful evening. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Shade. God bless you.
God bless you all.
Run for Prime Minister of UK. That's what I want. Show them Pepe. Pepe